we want students to involve so that they are actually being pushed through the pipeline to learn, exercise, as well as to take the responsibility.
Hello, my name is Samuel Chua. Today we will be joined by Zihao, President of HEYA Education Malaysia Association. Welcome, Zihao. Thank you for joining us. It's really nice to have you here at FMT. Please introduce yourself and tell us about HEYA.
Yeah, so HEYA Education Malaysia Association, in short, we call it HEYA. It's an organization, non-profit organizations, which envisage the transformation of youth to elites. Now, through three key aspects. One of the most important one, of course, capacity buildings to equip youth with the skill sets as well as the knowledge to compete and to survive in the market, in the talent markets. And of course, second part of it, we want to see systematic changes in terms of policy governance. So we always advocate for public policies, improvements, changes. And of course, lastly, all of this is done in a fashionable methods through what we call either fieldworks or even consultations and conferences that we organize.
We understand that HEYA has organized some notable events, including the National Student Advocacy Workshop and the National Students Leadership Conference. Can you tell us about these events and share with us why you've decided to organize them?
One of the key aspects that HEYA is working is on policy advocacies. So one of our core operations, one of the core values that we bring to our stakeholders is to advocate for the higher education reforms. Includes a politically free governance system, academic freedoms and university autonomous power, as well as the most important thing is students' participatory governance. So NASA is what we call the National Students Advocacy Workshop. Now, by the names, we're trying to guide students, trying to share with students how you would advocate for issues, advocate for certain improvements, advocate for certain changes in an effective way. It is a blend of three aspects that we have in NASA. Firstly, of course, is telling students, what's the importance and why we want to advocate for changes, and not for a change. And then second part of it, the core that we think, which will decide whether the advocacy success or fail is the skill, the soft skills. So what we have teach them in NASA, including project management, including negotiation skills, because definitely you need to compromise and you need to negotiate for resources, for some certain legislation changes to be picked up, to be incorporated. Right. And also last part, of course, we are trying to connect them to successful social youth icons, to learn from these youth icons, what is the success and failures. NSLAC, National Students Leadership Conference, is a conference that we have gathered students, youth leaders from 42 universities across Malaysia, which we are sitting down together to brainstorm, and to consult, and of course to come up with the final frameworks on higher education reform, as well as what is the major milestone or major footprints on COVID-19 reconciliations.
Do you feel like these events that HEYA has organized have had an impact? How so? Is there any progress on the reforms HEYA is pushing for?
Well, I think I would divide this into a few categories. Of course, in terms of the stakeholders, students as stakeholders, I would say we are really successful in driving awareness, equipping them with skills, as well as forming what we call advocacy coalition, meaning we are grouping students across different institutions so that we can prepare to work collectively in the futures.
With regard to government stakeholders, Owe explains the importance of engaging with them in order to voice their concerns on the need for higher education reforms.
Now, talking about higher education reforms in another perspective, we talking about government stakeholders. There's still a lot of efforts that we need to drive on that end, because across these few years, the political instability has become a very crucial blocking stones, I would say. All these changes would require us to really spend a little bit more effort, much more effort, I would say, to convince, to engage, to explain and to convince them that this higher education reform is eminent for us to transform to a knowledge societies to remain relevant, not just domestically, but in the international markets.
As the interview drew to a close, we spoke on the importance of ensuring greater student involvement.
We want students to involve so that they are actually being pushed through the pipeline to learn, to to exercise, as well as to take the responsibility. That is how our mechanisms is actually designed for. Now, of course, talking about whether that will end up be a smart decision or not, of course, that really depends on the context. But I believe always a great vision will need to have a step forward. A single step forward is very important to trigger a huge vision.